like to call to order the Wednesday, August 21st, 2019 meeting of the Airport Advisory Board. We begin our meetings with called Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand and join. Cindy, would you conduct a roll call, please?
Shannon Stebbins.
Here.
Lewis Worthy.
Here.
Dave McNary. Robbie Willis.
Here.
Brian Schultz.
Here.
Mark Zeef. Shannon Hicks.
Here.
Ed Weber.
Here.
Raleigh Ballas. Jim Dolan.
Here.
Damon Anderson.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. The first item is an open call to the public. I'm going to read a paragraph that's in accordance with Arizona open meeting laws. We will now have an open call to the public for citizens wishing to address the board on issues within the jurisdiction of the board. Your comments must be limited to 5 minutes or less. If you wish to address an item already on today's agenda, you should wait until that item is announced for a public hearing. At the conclusion of the open call to the public, individual members of the board may respond to criticisms made by those who address the board, may ask staff to review a matter, or may ask that a matter be placed on a future agenda. However, board members cannot discuss or take legal action on matters not already on the agenda. So having said that, is there anyone that would like to address the board on any item that's not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, the next item is approval of the July 17th, 2019 meeting minutes. The board members were emailed the minutes. Is there any discussion for any additions or corrections? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Without objection, the minutes are approved. Item 6 is communications announcement and airport supervisor's report. For that, Mr. Anderson.
Good evening. Don't have a lot this evening, but I wanted to go ahead and touch base on the RFP that we had. We had a committee put together of a couple of different airport managers, some local people, and higher up administration in the city. We had the two proposals that came in. They were more or less incomplete, for lack of better words, lots of holes in them. And the majority of the committee just decided that they couldn't, really score them. So we threw both of them out, canceled the RFP, and we'll look at possibly doing it again later if we desire to do so, maybe after the master plan gets out or so. Then the military projects, it's going pretty good. Terminal's coming along. They're doing some good remodeling in there. It's hopefully be done maybe by the end of this week for the most part of it. We've got all the old straps on the apron blacked out. We're ready to do some new layouts there. We've kind of changed it up a little bit from that drawing that we talked about the last time. After getting a look at that and talking to a few more people, we didn't actually have the separation that we needed if people were going to be taxiing between them. So we're going to change it up a little bit and give some more spacing. Don't know if I'd talked about it before, but at our airport capital improvement meeting that we had down in Phoenix, they had actually let us know that soil cement project didn't make the funding this year through the state because it's not a federal funding, it's state and local. And needless to say, got a call from Don Chris, the ADO officer down there. He said that there was some new legislation just recently passed. Extra $10 million got put into the budget, and we now have that project back on track for this year. So we're hoping to get that, moving forward pretty quick. And I'm sure a lot of people noticed that the Gate 5's been down. We had a bid. It's shocking that it's kind of taken us this long, but we had to kind of go back through another process to make sure it was all done right through the bids and, proposals, solicitations. But Armor Fence is going to be the ones that are going to take on the project. Hopefully they're going to start here in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and it should be completed it's estimated to be completed mid-September. So hopefully that'll be, and it's going to be a nice new setup. It won't be the type of gate where two vehicles can go between, or through at the same time. The card reader will be on one side. It'll be like all the rest of them on the field. And then y'all may have noticed that Taxiway Bravo got a fresh seal coat on it just the other day. That was good to see that they come on out and got that done. And hopefully that'll extend the life of that. And then last thing I got is, kind of back to the terminal remodel. I definitely want to welcome any type of donations like decorations, pictures, aviation related stuff. I'm trying to work on just decorating the inside of the terminal. I'm going to go down, hit the museum up, see if I can find some historical data to put in there. But that's all I have. I do want to talk about the master plan. That's kind of in the upcoming events that we're going to have the workshop coming up, but I did want to let everybody know that if they're part of that PAC committee, that I received my papers today through the mail, and then there's also been an email put out with the link where you can go in and look at the electronic file of the Chapter 4 alternatives phase of the master plan.
What's the date for that meeting now?
The new workshop, and it's going to be August 29th at 1:30 here in this room right here. We'll have the PAC meeting. We'll actually meet and we'll do that. And then it's at 5:30 in the terminal building. We'll have the public workshop again.
On August 29th as well?
Yeah, next Thursday. Yes, sir. That's all I have.
Any questions, comments? Okay, thank you very much. Item 7.1 is our first item for a public hearing, and it's presentation, discussion, and revisions to City Code Chapter 2.04 regarding board requests for discussions items. I asked that this be put on there so that the board could be made aware that on March 26th, the City Council changed the ordinance, and now the department liaison responsible for that committee, meaning Mr. Anderson, is in charge of approving our agenda or setting our agenda for us. As you can probably guess, I take exception with that. My assumption is that the City Council needed to get some control over the boards, and that's probably why they did it. I want to give you some background. Long before I moved here, 2005-ish time frame, this board was put under the control of the then airport manager. Within a few months, this board was then dissolved. X amount of months went by, and this board was then reconstituted, and that airport manager was found new employment. So we've had a history of this happening before. It's kind of like history repeating itself. So for this, just to let everybody know that we no longer control our agenda. The staff does. So with that is a public hearing. I'll open it up for any comments.
Oh, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. I was asked to present this item tonight. If I may?
You can.
Wonderful. Good evening. My name is
It's
Kelly.
amazing. See, nobody told me.
Oh. Well, my name is Kelly Gary. I'm the city attorney. Jess Knudsen, who is our city manager, he was going to come and present this item. I believe that you discussed that in that meeting. And he is at the league conference right now in Tucson. So he asked me to come and present a little bit of background and history on some of the changes that were recently made to the code. A little bit of background on the reasons why the code was updated. In January, the City Council had their annual retreat, and during that time, since now we have a new mayor, we took the opportunity to go back and look at Chapter 204 of the City Code and make any changes that might be necessary. There are actually quite a few antiquated procedures and processes that were in there that didn't make sense or we weren't really using, and so we took that opportunity to update those. Some of those included things like public requests for things on the agenda and also council requests for getting items on the agenda. So there was a lot of debate and a lot of discussion about how council gets their items on their agenda. And so a piece of that was also how board members get items on their agendas. And so I don't know that if you have any interest in what changes were made to the city councils, I'm happy to answer any questions on those. I'll get specific to the board changes. So the very general terms or provisions of boards are found in Chapter 204 as well. And so there was a new provision added to those sections, which is section 204, 610, and it talks about board requests. So it's more specific to when the board or board member has an item that they would like to see on a future agenda, how you go about requesting that item to be on that board. And so the provisions that were added We also, that's when we made the change from, used to see future agenda items, and now it's called future discussion items. I don't know if anybody even recognized that, but that change was made there. It's because sometimes when an item is requested by council member, board member, whoever, it might not be something that necessarily is going to come back to as a future agenda item. So maybe they just want some additional information on a specific item. Staff gets that information and sends it to them. So it's not necessarily a request for a future agenda item. It may equate to something later in the future, but it was just to kind of generalize that a little bit more. So it didn't seem like every time a council member or board member asked for additional information, it had to go on a future agenda item. So we made that a little more generic. It also gives us an opportunity to vet those items a little bit more. So the council member wouldn't have an expectation that they requested an item at this last meeting and it's going to come on the agenda for the following meeting. It gives staff an opportunity to gather information, determine how to appropriately present the information, get with that council member, discuss it a little bit more, discuss it with the mayor, and now there's a whole process together to develop that item more completely. And so that fell down to the boards a little bit too. And so now when you, as a board member, want to request that an item be placed on, so you'll do that during your future discussion items. And so one board member will make a motion that they want to discuss, I don't know, a taxiway. Then you need one more board member to say, I second that. Yes, I agree. We should talk about that at the next meeting. And that's all you need. You don't need to vote on it. There doesn't need to be any further discussion. Actually, you can't discuss it anymore. But that makes that a future discussion item for the board. The reason that we did that is so that at least two people on the board have to believe that that's an item worth discussing. Not necessarily on this board, but some other boards, we have issues with somebody coming up with an idea and asking it to be placed on the agenda, and nobody else is interested in talking about it. It might be a little bit of a crazy idea. It might be a bad idea to talk about it. Whatever the case may be, it was just to make sure that there are at least two board members that think, yeah, I think that's a good idea. That's something that needs to be discussed or looked at or researched further or brought back for discussion before the board in that case. So that's a little bit of a vetting process that we built in there. Then your department liaison, so in your case, this is Mr. Anderson. He's responsible to make sure that whatever course of action for your request is completed. So whether it's getting you additional information, handling something, whatever it may be, he's going to bring that back to the board and make sure that it's presented or handled in the best way possible. And so those, in a nutshell, those were the changes that were made. We'd be happy to send you a copy of that. I'm sorry that you didn't receive one. I don't know if you want me to read the paragraph to you. I should have brought extra handouts. I didn't know if you guys did PowerPoints or not, so I didn't bring a PowerPoint because I didn't figure it would be ready. So.
Well, I looked it up and printed it.
Oh, good.
So
wonderful. Good.
And Kelly, I appreciate the explanation. It's a little when I read it, and even after your explanation, there's a little bit of a concern.
Okay.
Because of the way it reads, it almost says that we can have a discussion item idea out there, but there's no way of knowing if that next meeting we're going to be discussing it. Is it going to be squashed completely forever? And this is what I understood boards and committees to be, basically assisting the city council with issues that come up in these various areas. Parks and Rec, Airport Advisory, Zoning Committee, all those, are helping the city council with items that, they've got this huge laundry list. And so you develop these boards to help you with things that might get missed because they're so busy with other stuff. So we have a city council representative who sits on our board meeting, and then he gets that input as to how it's going at the airport. And of course, Mr. Anderson also has a huge laundry list, and it's nice to hear from his tenants. So I think it's a great forum to do that. And from what I understood, that's what it's designed to be, a board or a committee. So of course, to me, it's freedom of speech, and this is important stuff to be discussed. It just kind of reads like we're being told that, okay, you can suggest it, but I'm not going to let you talk about it necessarily. And I don't think, I don't really understand the legality of that. I'm sure that's kind of where this is coming from. And I can understand what you're saying, having some discussion items being brought up and it get kind of out of control, or a meeting being, what appears to be a waste of time, I guess. But to me, any of these discussions shouldn't be looked at like that. You know, these are all concerned citizens, and, you know, when we go to the city council meeting, it's the same thing. Citizens want to be able to voice their opinion or put forth their concerns. So I have concerns about the way it reads, and your explanation is okay for me, but at the same time, I still feel a little bit concerned. It's almost like, you know, okay, well, why have a board if, you know, if we're not able to freely discuss things that are of concerns about the airport?
I wouldn't phrase it that you're not freely able to discuss things. And it's really rare that it happens, that an item comes up and it rises to my level and I said, no, you really can't discuss it at this time. And it's rarely a case that you can never discuss it. It's more of a time and place. So if it rises to a level where it's a legal issue, it could be something where we're in the middle of a claim or we're anticipating a litigation regarding an item. In that case, I'm not going to let you discuss it. And that has you sitting up here. Yes, you are citizens, but you're also board members, and you have legal responsibilities that the city has to oversee. So you kind of have to separate it a little bit. You're not just coming to the mic as a citizen voicing a concern during a call to the public. You are a board member sitting on the board, and the city is legally responsible for your words and your actions. So I put yourself in a little bit, you're a little bit higher up than a citizen, and you have responsibility. So it's not that you can't have those concerns and we can't have those discussions. It might not always be that we can have the discussions here at that level or at the exact time that you want to have them at. And that's why it's really important that you have the open communication that you have with Mr. Anderson and anybody else, so you can understand, okay, hey, we brought up 3 meetings ago, you know, we wanted additional information. When are you going to bring that? You are free to ask that even at the next meeting. If nothing, if you don't think anything's happening, okay, well, we're in future discussion again. 3 weeks ago or 3 meetings ago, we had asked for X information. Are you working on that? Give us a status. I mean, hopefully Damon's also giving you a status as you're moving forward. You've asked for information. He should be communicating with you. I mean, that's part of the liaison is responsible for that communication. If that's not happening, you have a chain of command to go up if you feel that you're not getting things done that you think need to be done. So, I mean, there's definitely ways to address that. So I don't want you to feel like you're being shut down or cut off in any way. But there has to be checks and balances, and there are reasons for those checks and balances.
I appreciate that, and I would say to everyone here that I have no problem with the present administration, and you and I personally have worked through the most contentious item that this board's ever had, and we did it successfully. However, during that time, someone very high up in staff ordered me not to discuss something. So I'm very sensitive to staff saying you can't do that. Last month, staff asked that something not be put on the agenda, and Mr. Dolan agreed, and I have no problem when Mr. Dolan agreed. But when staff said you can't put it on there, I had a problem with it. That's how I found out about this. When staff sent me an email saying you don't have the authority to put it on there. It's unfortunate that this wasn't communicated to the boards, but it wasn't. It did not receive a whole lot of public scrutiny as far as being out there. And I understand what you're saying, but this board doesn't serve at the pleasure of staff. It serves at the pleasure of the city council. And to me, if you, instead of department liaison, if you had put city council representative, would have been great, because then the tiebreaker is sitting right here. In reality, the tiebreaker is Mr. Dolan anyway. If we have an issue, we'll discuss it with staff and we'll go to that. But the real issue I have with all this is that the airport is very dynamic. I don't know tonight what I want to discuss next month because it hasn't happened yet, but it'll happen next week. And in the past, we've been able to talk with the airport supervisor and put things on the agenda that were relative to what's going on. I don't think we can operate 30 days, 45 days out and address the issues that are important to the consistency of the airport. I think I know why that you did this, and I think it's important. So the only issue I have with it is not anything that you explained, but the issue I have is that as far as I've made almost every meeting, I make a statement that staff does not work for this board. And I've always tried to be very upfront with that staff does not, we don't tell staff what to do. we advise the city council. But in my view, if I advise the city council, then the city council needs to be telling me what's on the agenda and not the staff. That's the problem I have with it.
I understand what you're saying, and I don't have an answer for you right now. It is a I guess complicated relationship that we have. I mean, staff is tasked with assisting and working with you and overseeing your board. So comes with that the responsibility of agendas and placing the items and putting agenda items on there that need to go on there. Like the next item, that's something that needs to come before you. And some things that you wouldn't know, like these types of changes to the code that should come before you, so you be advised. So that's the kind of stuff that staff would put on the board. It wouldn't be expected that you as board members would say, we'd like to have that on the board and have to request that. So as far as staff putting items on as they're dynamically happening, that's still going to happen. I mean, that's not going to change. It's not this isn't necessarily limiting your regular course of action. I don't foresee it necessarily changing how things have always operated as far as items and moving through and working with staff to create the agendas. This is really targeted to hit those weird items that maybe aren't anticipated and not expected type of items. I don't know that I don't have an example for the airport.
Items,
you guys aren't necessarily the issue.
Might not be something that we need to even be discussing. I understand.
Yeah.
That.
So
and in I had a great meeting with the city manager and Mr. Dolan, our council representative, and I'm confident that we can work out anything that we have for agendas. That's not what I don't like about this. I have no problem with Jim Dolan is great. Your office has always been over backwards to help me, and certainly I'm a big fan of Damon Anderson's, and the city manager and I get along great. And there's an open dialogue there. But what the issue I have is I don't think that any board, not just the airport board, but we need to focus, this is just airport, that I think that the person who has the final authority on what should be on the agenda should be the city council representative to that board, and not the staff. Okay. But and in all reality, that probably still exists. And I appreciate that. I appreciate everything you've said. I hope that you can appreciate how
absolutely.
It looks to me as well.
Absolutely. And Mr. Dolan is here, and he's hearing the comments that you're saying. And if we come back to address this issue and we need to change something or do something, that is a possibility of a discussion in the future. And if there's a workshop between the council and the board at some time in the future, this is one of the items that you guys can discuss and maybe clear up a little bit.
If I could just jump in really quick. I mean, I understand your frustration. It's very similar also to council too. I can't just put things on the agenda myself. It comes from staff. The mayor signs off on it. But just like you guys, I can ask for something to be put on. But even if I ask that, hey, let's look at the potholes on McCulloch, and somebody else also wants to look at that too, it does not mean we're necessarily going to have a discussion at the next council meeting. It could be something that's handled by the staff. So staff also determines, based by the ordinances, what can come in front of me as well to vote on too. So I kind of also understand what you're coming through, but your point. Of course, it is an airport advisory. It's an advisory board to the council, and I guess the concern is if there's something that's not necessarily on the council's radar, but I think it's the process is the important thing. Not necessarily that anybody sitting up here can just get something on that's going to be discussed that brought to the council level. It should be going through Damon, it should be going through me, and then it would come to the board. But I'm also a big believer in, like I said, when we talked about the RFP and even the hot fueling is a perfect example. There's an issue that's going to be coming in front of the council. We voted on it, we discuss it. None of us know very little about, hot fueling aircraft, let alone, I'm a hot air balloon pilot, not a fixed wing pilot, let alone talking about all the generators that run and all that stuff. I know very little about it. To me, that's an example of something that should come to the board, and your expertise helps us make a decision when it comes in front of us. However, there's not an abundance of things that come to the council level that it's about the airport. But it was also great about the advisory board is it's an informative meeting on the public level where people can come and ask some questions of the airport manager and let us know what the public wants so we can maybe get it on a future agenda item. So like I said, I do kind of understand, but like I said, it's also, I guess the concern is, of course we have to operate within the ordinances that are there, but I completely understand, and if there is an issue, if you feel something's being held back, definitely let me know, because I want to know that the proper channels are being utilized, so if that makes sense. I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but.
Here's my question. We have to make a suggestion that we want something on the agenda, then it has to be second. So if I'm approached saying this weekend, I have to actually wait 2 months to discuss it here on the board.
Not necessarily. So if it's a routine run of the item and you go to Damon and you say, hey, somebody asked me about this, and like, oh yeah, that's a great question, I'm going to put that on the agenda, it's not an issue. This is really for more of those off the wall type of, you might not get support in wanting to discuss it type of issues.
I understand that part, but the way it was explained to us, we have to have a second to even get it on the agenda. So in that case, wouldn't we be violating the code?
No, not necessarily. No. I mean, no, you're not. You wouldn't be violating the code at all. I mean, if you have concerns and you think items are of interest and you want to pass them along to the chair, you want to pass them along to Damon, that's totally fine. There's nothing in the code that prohibits you from doing that. And that's what you've been doing all along, and I think you should continue doing that. If you were to bring up a harebrained idea, I think we should, I don't even know what a harebrained idea would be at the airport. I think we should do something crazy at the airport that all the pilots would lose their mind if you said that, and you took that idea to Damon. Damon's like, I don't know about that. I think that's one that you should request an item on the future discussion agenda. And then you come here and you tell it, and everybody looks at you like you are totally crazy and mad. Those are the types of items that we're going to direct you. Staff will help direct you and say, I think that's a future discussion item type of request to make. But just your regular, ordinary, hey, I think we should talk about the open house, or I think we should talk about, hey, was there just construction done, or what improvements are being done? I mean, all of that's going to continue, and that really doesn't fall in this category.
Okay.
I guess my major concern is, as I said earlier, I don't know what we're going to need to discuss next month because it hasn't happened yet. I think it's been my desire that this board be very open to input from airport constituents, and that if it's valid, we get it on the agenda and we talk about it, to provide the public a public process for getting it out there. Some of which will never go to the city council or rise to the level of anything, but it's the ability to have that public process and let people be a part of it and influence decisions of staff. That may not be the mission of this board, but I think we've done a great job. And like I said, I have no quarrel with your office. You've supported this board 150% always. And Cal Sheehy was our council member prior, and now Mr. Dolan, and we couldn't be happier with anything that goes on. So if this doesn't negate the ability to have somebody call me and say this X, Y, and Z happened, and if I think that has risen to the level we ought to talk about it, if I can still get that put on the agenda, then I have no problem with it.
And just to clarify too, you can still get in touch with Damon and you can get it on the agenda, but if there's a point where he's like, no, I don't think it should be on the agenda, then you'd come to me and I'd be like, hey, why wouldn't we get it on the agenda? And then we'd go through that process, but you wouldn't have the board wouldn't have the ultimate power just to put something on the agenda. But you could still go to him. He's like, oh, that's a great point. We should definitely have that as a public discussion. Then he can put it on the agenda. It doesn't have to be something that's brought up here. He can still get it on. So you guys can still work together, but there's going to be times where the city attorney or the city manager is going to say, let's hold off on that because
there are times when things have come up that they didn't need to be there for legal reasons. I have no problem with that. If Damon and I can't agree on something, and if you become that's the way it ought to be. Because then you're still working for the city council.
Yeah.
It's just the way this is written, it gives the impression to me that we are now subordinate to the staff rather than subordinate to the city council.
I think the confusion is we needed to, submit it and then have a second motion, which would drag something out instead of a monthly meeting to 60 days. That's the big concern.
Kelly, can you assure them that they're not subordinate to the staff, that they're subordinate to me? Apparently that'll make everybody feel better.
I was just about to say, just remember that. Yeah.
Any other board members?
I just want to reiterate that, you know, I think I'm speaking for everybody here that we really do, we're trying to assist our city. And we're not trying to tell anybody what to do. We're not trying to interfere with what's legally right by any means. And I'm here as trying to do a service to assist the, you know, city council and helping them make good decisions. You know, it doesn't mean that I agree with everything, but that's the whole point, is to get that out there so that Jim can take it back to the city council if necessary, and hopefully make forward motion. But yeah, absolutely. I don't think any of us on the board want to hinder the process by, you know, interfering with any kind of legal type of things. It's just, it was confusing the way it read.
And just to put it in there, you know, I totally agree with just continuing to do the way we are. The only reason that one issue came up was just because it was a legal issue. You know, I don't feel like I want to start trying to dictate. I want you to continue. I feel like we should, you know, have us a meeting, if not once every 2 weeks or so, to talk about these things. But I really want y'all's support and y'all's ideas of what should be on the agenda. I mean, I definitely am going to look for that. I'm not trying to, you know, come up with more work for myself to start putting some of that stuff on there. I mean, like I say, the only reason that, you know, some of this happened was just because of the legal issues that we were afraid of.
Oh, let me say again that my concerns have nothing to do with the present city council, the present staff. It's history, and some of it is old history, 2005-ish timeframe. So this is a public hearing. Let me invite anyone who wants to speak. Mr. Stokely, Cindy, do you know the spelling all right? You know that? Okay.
Stokley, resident for 17 and a half years. I rent Hangar 74 from the city. Anyway, first thing I'm having an issue with is you put something on the agenda, okay? Staff can stop it. I'm not a fan of his immediate supervisor, and I don't want him stopping it. And Damien, I love you, but your boss is a nice guy.
Oh,
anyway, but I want to make sure that we have an explanation of why. If it's a legal issue, I want to hear it. Okay. If staff just doesn't want us to discuss it, I don't think that's right. Okay. Unless we come up with some kind of explanation stating that, you know, minimal, just enough to let us know that, okay, we need to not do this now. Otherwise, I feel like we're hiding stuff. And I think we need transparency in our city as much as we can until we cross a legal line. All right, thank you.
Let me just, Damon, who is your immediate supervisor? Now, that's all changed, is it not? Anybody else like to make any comments? Go ahead, Garvey.
I'm just a little curious on if something you do decline putting something on the agenda, are we going to get an explanation on why?
Let's go ahead. No, I definitely would give you every explanation I could, for sure. Definitely wouldn't be. I'm all about the transparency myself. I totally agree with that, with what you said, and yeah, I'm definitely not trying to hide anything.
A concern of mine. If you're just like, nope, it's not on there, city council or whatnot. No, we're not going to discuss it.
No, not at all.
And I'd say too, it's also it's something that would come to the council level for us to make a decision. It's not necessarily airport management, or it's, hey, why don't we move why don't we paint the new terminal yellow? Well, that's not really that is a staff decision. That's Damon's decisions. That's not something that would come to the city council. And if somebody wanted to bring that as a discussion in front of the airport advisory board, we could have the discussion, I suppose, but it's nothing that would ever make it to our level to make a decision. So in situations like that, just because somebody, well, it's the airport advisory, it's about the airport, we should discuss it. Well, but it's not something that would make it to the council. It's nothing that we would need you guys to advise the council on, because it wouldn't see it to our level. So it just, like I said, maybe there's an example of some of the issues, ordinances and different things, but as far as anything regarding airport management, that's still, definitely a staff issue. The city manages the airport, so that would still be a Damon issue. So.
And some of the only things that I'm going to be wanting to put on the agenda, without talking to y'all first, is just some of these things that I am dealing with grants and different projects like that, that are going to have to go to the city council. And I wanted to try to explain everything I can here first to Mr. Dolan, so that when he gets there and people ask him, he'll have better answers as well. That's one of the items on there tonight, the extension of the on-call CNS contract. I'm not sure how many people in here would have anything to say about that, but I want to at least give a little brief explanation for when it does show up to council for task orders, things like that, that he's got some kind of a, understanding of what's going on.
And that's my support. I'd like to see anything that is going to the council level definitely coming to here first. I know in the past with history that hasn't always happened. They might want to bypass the advisory board and go directly to the council, but I'd prefer anything that airport related, it would go to the advisory board to advise us on that. And we have the discussion with you guys that know about the airport and know about aviation and have all that expertise, and then you could advise us when we have to make the decision. So.
Anybody else in the public like to make a comment? I'm going to close the public hearing. Any further comments from any board members on this item? Move on to item 7.2, discussion and recognition of the amendment number 1 to professional services agreement with CNS Engineering to extend our on-call consulting service. And Mr. Anderson is going to present that.
Yeah, like I was just kind of mentioning, this is the FAA has its own solicitation process when it comes to doing these projects. When you put RFPs out and things like that, they understand that we have a lot of projects going on, and it's a very extensive process that they have to do. So they give us the option of doing the process one time and creating an on-call service engineer for you, and it's normally good up to not exceeding 5 years. And what that means is once we've done that whole process about getting their qualifications and what have you to make sure that they're the FAA won't let you take the lowest bidder. I mean, they say that's just not even an option. You have to base everything off of qualifications. And so you go through that whole process and you make sure that these people do meet the standards that we need to have. And then once you get that, then we can do the 5-year on-call. So then any project that comes up with inside that 5 years, we don't have to now solicit it and do the RFP process and go through that whole lengthy process. They are already, covered under that process. And so what we've done with CNS, and what was done in the past before I got here, was they created the contract with CNS, and they did a 3-year contract with them with the 2 1-year extension options. And what we're at right now is their first 1-year extension option. And to give you CNS a little background on them, these guys are great. Lance, I work with him, several of the guys there, but it's not only the stuff that they're doing, that's on the paperwork, the designs and the blueprints and stuff like that you see. These guys do a lot of stuff for us. They really help out with making sure we get all of our deadlines met with, putting the stuff on the airport capital improvement plans and getting them submitted to the FAA on time and making sure everything's, T's are crossed and I's are dotted, which is a huge help. And it's understandable why they do that, because so long as those projects get on the board, well, then those are the projects that they're going to get to work on as well, and that's one of the reasons they help with those things. So anyhow, I just kind of wanted to give a little bit of a background like that of how that process goes. And then, so let's take the taxiway alpha design that we're working on right now. So they're already the on-call contract person. So they've created the scope of work. We get it approved. I've got all that done. The grants now come through for it. So then what would happen is CNS would create an agreement of the work that they're going to do, and then that will go to City Council as a task order. And then they're going to approve this task order that they've done. It's not necessarily and so every little project, so now that the soil cement project is back on board, well, now I'm going to be emailing Lance, say, hey, I need to get a scope of work. We'll get his scope of work from him. We'll send it to ADOT. It gets approved. And we go through that whole process again to make sure that all that paperwork is on top of that. And then it'll go to council as a vote for another task order. And that's just kind of a background of how that's all working. And I'm very happy with CNS engineers. They're great people, and I've been working with them a long time, not only here but at the other airports as well.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to make a comment? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. I'm very familiar with this process of CNS and the on-call, and was a part of getting it created 3 or 4 years ago. To have them or another firm like them, there's not any city of our size in the United States that has in-house expertise that can deal with the federal bureaucracy at airports. In fact, I suspect the CNS helps Phoenix and large metropolitan areas as well. So I'm 100% behind it as far as recommending that City Council approve it. The other thing that this does for us is that next month, when something comes up at the airport that we don't even know about today, you can pick up the phone and call them and get an answer right now instead of having to go through a process to let a contract to get an answer to something. And with the FAA process of 3.5 to 4 years from beginning to completion of a grant project, their expertise is incalculable, in my opinion. Anyone else? I would entertain a motion that we recommend approval to the City Council.
I'll motion for the approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Ready to vote? All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? So, Mr. Dolan, we, as a board, would recommend that the City Council favorably consider this proposal from CNS Engineering.
Thank you.
Takes care of the business for tonight. Future discussion items is now the new term. I do have one, and I'd like to request that next month we have on the agenda a report of where the master plan committee is. I know we'll have a meeting on the 29th, and there'll be a public meeting available at the airport that evening, but we can present it at the board level as well and keep everybody here informed. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Anyone else have any item they would like to see on the future agenda as a future discussion item? Seeing none, our next scheduled meeting is Wednesday, September 18th, 2019. And without objection, have a motion to adjourn, please.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Without objection, we are adjourned.